That's right, Paralives and The Sims are actually very different. Yes, they are both life simulation games, but that is where the similarities end. The first and most obvious difference is that The Sims is made by Maxis under EA, a huge multinational company, whereas Paralives is made by a small team of developers in Canada, relying on donations of Patreon members to fund the production of their game. According to Patreon, they are making £32,391 a month, which is worth over 50,000 Canadian dollars, which is like a $5,000 a month salary per person, assuming they are all being paid equally. That is a lot of money. And I mean, to be fair, like, get it where you can, I'm not judging. I see many people complain that they haven't seen much gameplay from Paralives, that they've only seen build mode and creator power modes. And I do understand the frustrations completely, especially when people are paying into the game. But I think it's important to note that Paralives is still in very early access. The majority of larger video game companies like EA don't have to show early access because they already have the funding. They don't have to rely on Patreon members. Therefore, they only really generally tend to show us gameplay previews once the game is almost ready to be released. Since Paralives is a game that relies on crowdfunded donations, this isn't really possible. Therefore, of course, they do need to show people the development that they're paying for, which is why we haven't seen life simulation development yet. And despite being managed by only 10 people, Sims fans seem to have really huge expectations of this game, often comparing it to EA and The Sims 4 in their big multinational cash grabby glory. And I just think it's bringing a lot of toxic and negative energy to the Paralives game and to the team that make it. I see hate comments like, holy fuck, is this game ever hogging to release, or are you people getting paid for an unreleased game? Copying The Sims? Not a good idea. And you know, like, I don't want to make this video super negative, so I'm only leaving a couple of examples, because the majority of comments I do see are really positive, or at least just neutral. Regardless as to whether you love this game and you're excited about it, whether you hate the look of the game, or if you just have a neutral or no opinion about the game, there is one thing that everybody is doing, and that is comparing it to The Sims. And not only comparing it to The Sims, but comparing it in the most unnecessary ways. Comparing Paralives to The Sims 4 is like comparing Zelda Breath of the Wild to Elden Ring, just because they are both in the same genre. Like, yes, they are in the same category of games, but they are literally completely different. The Sims has been the only life simulation game series to ever really take off. As such, it's the only life simulation game that most of us know, but that doesn't mean that every single life simulation game must abide by the standards set by The Sims. Simmers are notorious for complaining about The Sims 4, especially in places like Twitter, including myself, by the way. We all love to complain about the myriad of problems with the game and how we'd like it just to be so much different and so much better. Naturally, I do see some people kind of using Paralives like a punch bag, venting their frustrations about The Sims 4 onto Paralives and almost threatening them. You must fix this problem that's wrong with The Sims 4 in your game. Maybe it is a good thing to let the Paralives team know exactly what you love about The Sims 4 and what you hate about The Sims 4 and how that could lead to the development of Paralives. But at the end of the day, if Paralives was just a copy of The Sims 4, then it wouldn't really be anything special. The most notable and massive difference about these games is the payment structure. Unfortunately, The Sims 4, made by EA, has a very cash grabby model, giving us a basic bitch game followed by DLC to fill in the blanks of dissatisfaction with that base game. Paralives, on the other hand, seems to be taking a thankfully much less cash grabby and more of a holistic approach. Paralives is not a base game like The Sims 4 is a base game. Paralives is just a game. There are no cash grabby intents to withhold core content and upsell it later on as DLC. Paralives is a final game. They said that the game will get free updates as the game goes on, and they may give us DLC, but fundamentally it is just a normal game. A really good example of this is Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley is an indie game made by an indie developer. As far as I'm aware, Stardew Valley does not have any DLC, but it consistently gets a lot of updates. And with those updates, people continue to play the game, therefore it continues to build momentum and still get popular. Therefore, the game still manages to make money without upselling DLC. EA, if you are listening, upselling DLC isn't the only way to make money and keep a game alive. Another great example of this is Minecraft. Minecraft consistently has free updates. You only have to buy the game once and then you have it forever. Yet Minecraft is one of the most popular games in the entire world, even though it doesn't have paid for DLC. I really love that Paralives are not taking this approach and they're actually making it different, which is another reason why we need to stop comparing it to The Sims 4. We already know Paralives will come with pets, bikes, and seasons, all of which are gameplay functions with how does DLC in The Sims 4. As well as this, we're also getting a ton of features that currently have never even existed in any Sims game. game, including precise tattoo mole and scar placements, a height slider, and really cool looking build tools. And to be fair, The Sims also has a lot of features which won't exist in Paralives, such as a first person mode or supernaturals and occults. Apart from handsome Squidward, weirdly, he seems to be a part of Paralives. Not every single life simulation game has to have the same structure as The Sims, and I'm really glad that they're currently taking their own direction without being weighed down by any pre-existing conceptions about what a life simulation must be based on The Sims. But despite that, I see a lot of people say things online like, I want Paralives to have a generations pack. Paralives better come with a good aspiration system with aspiration reward points, and we need to have an active career system. Like, yeah, these are totally valid points, but I often see these opinions come from the perspective of The Sims and how Paralives could implement Sims features in a way that's either better or the same, as opposed to just implementing life simulation features. Although, for example, RPG games all follow a very similar feature. They all have the same core style of gameplay, such as leveling up and EXP systems or whatever, but every single RPG game has its own individual appeal, whether that be art style or difficulty or storyline focus. This has allowed a whole genre to expand to a wide variety of audiences, each looking for something a bit different. And based on that, I think it's really exciting that Paralives could open the life simulation gaming genre open to new people who not necessarily have ever really been interested into The Sims 4 before. Let's face it, people who play The Sims are a very niche bunch of people, and most of us Simmers do fit into a very niche category. Having a brand new life simulation game with a new audience could certainly bring new light into the genre. One new perspective I'm extremely excited about is the art style. The Paralives art style looks very different now to how it did upon the release of the initial previews, and seems to have taken almost like a sketchbooky style to the Parafolk. In comparison, the environment itself is in a much more cartoony, vibrant, yet quite simple style. I see a lot of people complain about this in a way that makes me laugh, because people say, I want Paralives to have a Maxis match style. I want Paralives to have a realistic Alpha CC style. And it's like, again, these are very unhelpful comparisons. Paralives is not The Sims. It doesn't have to abide by either Maxis match or Alpha CC. It can take its whole new look, and that's completely okay. I really like how the art style has taken a really contrasting approach so far. It's something that we only usually see in Japanese style video games, particularly JRPGs, usually done to create an intentional dynamic between the characters and the background to make the characters pop out more. The developers of Paralives have also come out and stated that the reason for the art direction of this is to allow the Parafolks to be easy to spot, as well as having a main focus on the gameplay, not the aesthetics. And I can't help but feel like the aesthetics thing is a dig at The Sims 4, which, by the way, has incredibly beautiful neighborhoods. The Sims 4 is a very beautiful game, but do you know what? It's beautifully dead, because even though we have these huge big open worlds, you can't do anything in them. You can't interact with them, you can't click on objects, you can't really do anything there, because the focus seems to be a lot on art assets, not on gameplay. With all the craziness that's gone on with The Sims 4, it's really nice just to see a breath of fresh air in the life simulation genre. Paralives at this stage appears to be totally distinguishable from The Sims, taking a step away from this culture of upselling furniture assets and quirky gameplay content as DLC to instead focus on what life simulation games actually are. I do love The Sims, even though I do bitch about The Sims 4 a lot, I know. I do love The Sims, particularly The Sims 2 and The Sims 3. Although I rarely play The Sims 4 in my free time these days, I do love playing The Sims 3 in my free time. Having said that, there are many things that I like about The Sims 4. Things that I feel like Paralives either can't do or shouldn't do. For example, occults. I think occults are really great in The Sims 4. Not just occults, but celebrities, the way that they have their own skill tree systems and things. I think it's really interesting and in-depth. I also love how The Sims 4 has a huge modding community, but that's okay. It's okay for The Sims 4 to be good at something and Paralives to be bad at it, just as Paralives can be good at something that The Sims 4 is bad at, and that's because they are separate games. With that being said, if the Paralives developers happen to be watching this video, I really hope that you run with your own vision of what you actually want a life simulation game to be. The more life simulation games there are out there, the more perspectives you can bring to the genre, and having variety is never going to be a bad thing. Of course, nobody's forcing you to like Paralives, nobody's forcing you to even play Paralives, but let's face it, it is difficult when there's not much of a choice of life simulation games out there, and that's why I understand people are comparing the two games, but I think it's important to take a step back and maybe not compare them so much. I personally do often find myself comparing Paralives to The Sims, and I'm personally trying really hard not to do it myself, so I understand it is really difficult, and I really hope many other game developers, whether they be indie developers or even massive, large-scale, rich developers, actually make their way into the life simulation gaming genre, because it does add more perspective and variety into not only the genre, but also opening it up to a brand new audience. In fact, recently Disney have appeared to have announced they're actually making a new life simulation game, taking on a lot of the current expectations laid out by The Sims, but even so, making a totally different approach out of it. I've already covered every single thing we know about this game, so make sure you check out that coverage here. See you in the next one.